Hello, guys, and now we're going to continue with the second part of the unit, and we're going to talk about imaginary and unreal situations about the present and the future. So, well, right now, guys, you know that we are in a difficult situation because we are in quarantine, so we cannot go out as we wanted. We cannot go to school. We cannot go to Paris or we cannot go to the cinema. But for example, try to imagine, guys. I'm going to ask you this question and try to think about, for example, your daily routines, your work, your school, your family. I don't know, maybe your friends, other things. Try to imagine what would you do differently if you were not in quarantine right now. What do you think that you would be doing? Obviously, this is something which is imaginary because we cannot do it. It's impossible right now, but we can imagine that situation. So, what would you do? Okay, I'm gonna share, guys, with you some of my ideas, and so you can see how can we describe imaginary situations about the present or the future. For example, in my case, if I weren't in quarantine, obviously I would wake up very early because, well, it's very important, well, to arrive on time. But what would happen if I didn't wake up early? Well, this is simple. If I didn't wake up early, I wouldn't arrive early to my classes. But at the moment, I am not going to the university because we cannot go there. So, another possibility, well, I think that if I had my normal routine, I wouldn't spend time with my family like now. So that is something which is positive. So something about the quarantine, we can see that we have some positive aspects, some negative aspects, but all these are imaginary situations about our, well, in this case, my present, and also it could be my future. Other examples, well, if I didn't have to stay at home, uh, I would be at university for 8 hours because in my normal routine, obviously, I am not home and I have to work. So this would be different as well. And for example, talking about, I don't know, my free time activities, my friends, I think that if there wasn't any quarantine, I would see my friends and we would spend time together. Maybe I would go to a party or I would go to drink something with some friends. And also, if I could go out, I would go shopping with my family, my sister, and maybe I would visit my relatives. My grandmother, my grandfather. But obviously, I can't do that because it's not safe. Okay, and finally, talking about this situation, I think that if I were in a normal day, I might be less stressed because, well, being home and working from home sometimes could be a little bit difficult or stressing. So these are imaginary situations. Okay, now let's think about another imaginary idea. For example, try to imagine that you are a famous, you were a famous astronaut, and you were selected to go to Mars, to travel to Mars, or I don't know, maybe the moon. I'm going to think about Mars, planet Mars. So, would you travel to Mars if you had the chance? Okay, it's a difficult situation. I don't know. I think for me would be a little bit difficult. And well, I think that if I had the opportunity to go there, I might go, but I am not really sure. And I think that I would have to think about it carefully. It's not an easy decision. It's a little bit complicated. Um, why? Well, because there could happen good or bad things. I don't know. Maybe the food could be difficult to eat. The journey might be dangerous, and well, I don't know. Maybe the equipment could break up, or I don't know. It would be a little bit complicated. So I think that if I travel there, I don't know, I could encounter dangerous situations. So that's why it's a difficult situation, a difficult decision. For example, imagine that if the spaceship exploded in space, I would die or I might get really, really injured. So this is not something, well, really, really good. And I think that, for example, if I decided to go there, it would be difficult because I would eat dried or strange food, and I would need to adapt to those kind of foods. And obviously, I would miss Mexican food, tacos, tortas. So it would be really difficult for me to try to adapt to that situation. But I think that if I traveled into space, I would have to wear special clothes. And I think that going to the bathroom could be really, really complicated. Only imagine you are wearing a special space suit. So I don't know, but I think it could be really complicated to do simple things that we do now on Earth, planet Earth. So, in conclusion, if I had the chance to travel to Mars, it would be difficult because I might never return home. So I don't know, but it's a little bit complicated. Obviously, this is only something imaginary that could happen now or maybe could happen in a future, but it's not very probable. It's only something imaginary. It's something which is unreal. Okay, guys, so if you pay attention here, guys, when you want to describe things that are not real or which are improbable about the present and the future, we usually use well, second conditional. And in conditionals we have two elements. We have, in this case, an imaginary situation and we have an imaginary result. For example, the imaginary situation: if people travel to Mars, what could be the result? Well, they would encounter a lot of troubles. Another example, if the imaginary situation is if I were an astronaut traveling to Mars, what would be the result? I could be very excited. In this case, I have was where, but it's more common to use where in conditionals. Was is also correct. And the last one, if I decided to travel to Mars, I might die because it would be a dangerous experience. So this is my imaginary situation and my imaginary result. So second conditional, guys, is not difficult. You have practiced this before. So the basic elements in my imaginary situation is simple past, if simple past. And in the imaginary result, the most common, in this case, modal is would, and my verb, especially when you think that something is very probable, but there are other alternatives. For example, you can use could plus the verb for things that could be possible or probable, or you can use might plus the verb to describe things that could be less probable. And well, basically, this is the way that you can describe unreal or improbable situations about the present or the future. And to conclude, guys, only remember that, for example, you can change also the order. For example, in this case, I have, if I were an astronaut traveling to Mars, I could be very excited. But you can change the order. For example, you can start with the result and then the situation. You can say, I could be very excited if I were an astronaut traveling to Mars. Okay, guys, so that's it for me, guys. Thank you very much. Try to study, try to practice, and I hope you have understood. And well, thank you very much, guys. See you next time. Goodbye.